Black woman denied entry at bank. Next hour, she buys the entire building. You can't be serious, Maya Brooks said, tightening her coat against the February chill. Her tone was calm, but her eyes locked in a direct, unblinking stare with the security guard standing squarely in front of the glass doors of Manhattan Trust Bank. "I am," he replied, folding his arms. "You don't have an appointment, ma'am. Clients with high-value accounts don't just walk in off the street." Maya didn't flinch. She had dealt with men like him her whole life, those who stood between her and a door, not because she didn't belong, but because they thought she didn't. "I'm here to make a transaction. That's what banks are for, aren't they?" she said, her voice low and steady. He gave her a look that wasn't quite a smirk, but close. "You can use the ATM outside. The lobby's for clients with real business." Behind the glass, two tellers glanced up, watched the exchange, then quickly looked back down. A woman in a fur coat breezed past Maya and was let in with a smile. "Excuse me," Maya called after the woman. "Do you have an appointment?" The woman glanced back, confused. The security guard stepped forward. "That's enough." "No," Maya said. "What's enough is assuming I don't belong here based on how I look. You didn't ask that woman for an appointment." "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step away." Maya exhaled slowly. "Sure," she said, "but remember me." She turned and walked down the steps of the bank building. Her heels clicked with purpose. If anyone had been paying close attention, they might have noticed the smallest hint of a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. She didn't call the police. She didn't shout, didn't record a viral video. She didn't need to, because she already owned more than they could imagine. They just didn't know it yet. Exactly 45 minutes later, Maya was standing on the top floor of the glass and steel high-rise adjacent to the bank. The office buzzed with tension. Phones rang. Legal aides whispered nervously. A junior associate knocked softly on the glass wall. "Miss Brooks? Everyone's in the conference room." "Good," she said, setting her coffee down and walking in. Inside the boardroom sat a group of executives, including Richard Crane, regional director for Sterling Real Estate Holdings. He was mid-sentence, flipping through a set of documents. "And as we finalize the acquisition, the bank lease terms can be reviewed. The Midtown location, I believe, has roughly 7 years remaining." He looked up and blinked. "Ms. Brooks, I'd like to accelerate that timeline. Maya said as she took her seat at the head of the table. Richard paused. "You mean the lease? They're a stable tenant?" "They're a disrespectful tenant," Maya corrected. "And they violated our standards of public conduct." She slid a folder across the table. "Starting today, Manhattan Trust has 30 days to vacate the premises." A beat of silence fell over the room. "You're evicting a major financial institution?" Richard asked, incredulous. "I'm replacing them," Maya said. Another beat. "Wait," one of the assistants said, glancing up. "You're opening a bank?" "No," Maya said, calmly sipping her coffee. "I'm opening the bank." 12 hours earlier, Maya had flown in from Atlanta on a red-eye after wrapping up a keynote speech at a Black Women in Finance summit. She was exhausted but energized. Her plan was to tour a few investment properties quietly, maybe even drop by the Midtown building she'd just added to her real estate portfolio. It had been a big year. Her fintech company had just crossed $1 billion valuation, and she'd been featured on the cover of Forbes. But this trip had taken a different turn. The security guard at Manhattan Trust had no idea he was speaking to the new owner of the building he worked in, and that was the point. Maya had chosen not to disclose her identity because she was testing something, whether the culture of discrimination was as embedded as she feared. And it was. It wasn't just about one guard or one branch. It was about the entire system who got treated with respect and who got interrogated at the door. She'd walked into that bank as a regular Black woman. and the system had responded accordingly. But now, she wasn't just going to challenge it. She was going to dismantle it. Back in the bank lobby, the security guard Walter was checking IDs again. He glanced up, confused, as a group of suited individuals approached. "You guys from corporate?" he asked. "No," the woman at the front replied, flashing a badge. "We're with the New York State Financial Oversight Division. This branch is under investigation." "What?" he blinked. "Why?" "Multiple discrimination complaints, including one filed this morning," she said, nodding toward a man carrying a box of evidence. Apparently, someone was denied entry unlawfully. Walter's face paled. You might want to sit down," she added. And just like that, the tables turned. Later that afternoon, Maya stood in the same lobby that had rejected her. But now the bank was empty, silent. The tellers were gone, the manager's desk was abandoned, and the security guard had been escorted out. She looked around slowly, thoughtfully. Then, turning to her assistant, she said, "Let's get the design team in here. I want it to feel open, welcoming, transparent." "Got it. What are we calling the new bank?" Maya paused, then smiled. "Equity first." That night, a video of Maya's quiet takeover began to trend on social media. But it wasn't about revenge, it was about change. Her caption was simple. "I didn't need to shout, I just needed a seat at the table, and then I bought the table." And beneath it, hundreds of comments poured in. "This is how you fight the system." She didn't get she got power. Imagine being that guard right now. But one comment stood out. It was from a young girl named Aaliyah. "I want to be like her." And Maya, sitting at her desk in her new headquarters, smiled. "Then I'm doing something right." The morning after Maya issued the eviction notice, the executive floors of Sterling Real Estate Holdings were in a quiet storm. Not because of the decision itself, Maya had final say over property usage and tenants, but because of how she made it. Fast, bold, and unapologetic. It shook the room, especially Richard Crane, who had assumed Maya was just another billionaire investor playing real estate like a game of Monopoly. He underestimated her. But Maya didn't come this far for her moves to be explained or justified. She came to change the board entirely. "You know, she filed the termination order without informing the board first," Richard hissed to his colleague, Emma, as they sat in the glass conference room. Emma didn't look up. "She is the board. You know that, right?" Richard scoffed, leaning back in his seat. "It's reckless. That bank has been in that building since the 1980s. Emma finally looked at him. "And it's been discriminating against black customers since the 1980s, too. Maybe that's the real problem." Across town in Harlem, Maya sat in her mother's brownstone kitchen, nursing a second cup of coffee. The house hadn't changed much since she was a girl. The worn linoleum floor, the floral curtains, the creak in the step up to the pantry. It grounded her, reminded her why she fought the way she did. "You caused a storm downtown yesterday," her mom, Diane, said as she placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of her. "Made the evening news, too." Maya smiled. "Didn't mean to stir things up this soon. I just walked in like any other person, and they made the mistake of treating me like I was less than." Her mother shook her head. They saw a black woman in a designer coat and still couldn't imagine she had business in a bank lobby. "Which is exactly why I'm replacing them. Not just with something shinier, but something better." Diane took a seat beside her. "Just make sure you don't forget who you're doing it for. You've got power now, real power. Don't let it pull you away from your purpose." Maya met her mother's gaze. "I won't. That building's just the start." Meanwhile, back at Manhattan Trust, panic was quietly unraveling. Inside the regional manager's office, William Harper was on his third call of the hour, his tie loosened, voice tight with urgency. "You're telling me she owns the building," he said into the phone, pacing. "Why wasn't I informed of this acquisition?" The voice on the other end replied with a clipped tone. You were. An internal memo was sent 6 weeks ago. Maybe if you read something that didn't have a Chase logo on it, you'd know that. William gritted his teeth. Look, we can't just be evicted without cause. We've had a standing lease for 7 years. There was a pause. You might want to read that lease again. There's a clause about conduct, public reputation. You violated it. You're lucky she didn't file suit. He hung up. For the first time in a long while, William Harper didn't feel like the man in charge, and that terrified him. As the day unfolded, word of Maya's ownership spread like wildfire across social media and news outlets. Articles sprang up. Fintech mogul evicts discriminatory bank, launches inclusive alternative. Maya Brooks sends shockwaves through Wall Street. In offices, barbershops, college dorms, and Twitter threads, her story resonated. Some people cheered, others were skeptical. She's just flexing power. No, she's changing the game. Bet she won't follow through. She's already halfway there. And then came the messages. Hundreds of them, from small business owners, from young black professionals, from women who had been humiliated at counters and behind teller lines. People who knew exactly what it felt like to be dismissed in a place designed to hold their money, but not their humanity. Maya read every single one. And then she made a call. 2 days later, the empty bank lobby looked nothing like the sterile white and chrome it once was. The design team was already sketching renderings. Gone were the cold marble floors and velvet ropes. In came soft wood accents, open counters, a children's play corner, even a wall with portraits of community heroes. But that wasn't the surprise. What was the surprise, at least to the growing media swarm and city officials, was the list of initial hires and community advisors Maya announced. Not financial elites, not Ivy League MBAs. She brought in Erica Lewis, a former high school teacher turned personal finance educator from Queens. Tyrese Shaw, a 22-year-old former cashier who'd been denied a bank loan but started a successful sneaker resale business. And, most shockingly, Marcus Bradley, the same security guard who had denied Maya entry just days earlier. Everyone was stunned, even Marcus himself. "Why are you offering me a job?" he asked, standing nervously outside the new lobby with his security badge in hand. "Because you were part of the problem," Maya said. "But you can be part of the solution, too." He blinked. "I don't understand. You saw me and assumed I didn't belong, but that moment wasn't about just you. It was about the system you were trained in. You followed a rulebook written to exclude people who look like me and you." "I know," Marcus said quietly, "and I've been thinking about that since. I'm sorry." "I'm not interested in apologies," Maya replied. "I'm interested in progress. Come work here. Learn. Unlearn. Be better." He hesitated. "Unless you'd rather keep guarding a place that never respected you either." Marcus looked around at the community art already going up on the walls, at the photos of young kids and local leaders, at Maya standing there not with a grudge but with purpose. "I'll take the job." Later that evening, Maya hosted a small press briefing outside the soon-to-be Equity First building. "You could have sued them, taken it to the press, made them grovel," one journalist said. "Why go through all this effort instead?" Maya smiled. "I don't want their apology. I want the next black woman who walks into a bank to be met with respect, not suspicion. I want my niece to open a business account without being talked down to. I want systems that work for us, not just around us." And then came the twist that no one had expected. She wasn't just opening one bank. She was launching 5 more across the city in the next year, funded by private investment, staffed by community leaders, focused on financial literacy, small business loans, and dignity-first service. A quiet gasp rippled through the crowd. Financial justice isn't just a dream, Maya said. It's the next chapter. And just like that, her story transformed from viral moment to full-blown movement. The Monday morning air buzzed with nervous energy as the final tenants of the old Manhattan Trust building packed their things under silent supervision. The once confident employees who used to strut through the polished lobby now kept their eyes low, shoulders tense, moving quickly as if afraid of bumping into Maya again. They had seen the news. Every outlet was talking about it. The bank that denied a black woman entry? She now owned the building, and not just the building, she was turning it into something that would redefine what banking meant in underserved communities. But as Maya watched from a discreet perch on the mezzanine, sipping a cappuccino from a black-owned cafe that would soon occupy the corner suite, her thoughts were elsewhere. She wasn't thinking about headlines or hashtags. She was thinking about the board. Because while the public praised her, the real sharks hadn't spoken yet. She was about to hear from them. "Are you sure about this?" Devin asked as they rode the elevator to the top floor. He was her oldest friend, now her general counsel, and had been with her since she pitched her first startup idea from a Harlem co-working space with a whiteboard and a prayer. "I've never been more sure of anything," Maya replied, her tone calm but resolute. "But they're going to fight this. Hard." He nodded. "They always do when a black woman disrupts the system." The elevator doors slid open to reveal a sleek glass boardroom where 10 powerful stakeholders in Sterling Real Estate Holdings waited, all older, all white, all looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. Maya walked in like she owned the place, because she did. Not through inheritance or favors, but through brilliant investments, smart partnerships, and a fierce belief that power meant nothing unless you used it to dismantle barriers. "Miss Brooks," said Richard Crane without even bothering to rise, "we've reviewed your eviction decision. It was bold." "That's one word for it," Maya said as she took a seat at the head of the table. "Another would be overdue," Richard smirked. "You've stirred a lot of media buzz, I'll give you that. But do you understand what you've put at risk? That bank was a legacy tenant. A legacy of exclusion, racial profiling, and systemic disrespect," she shot back. "We don't need tenants like that." An older woman, Vivian Nash, leaned forward, her tone dripping with concern disguised as condescension. "Maya, darling, let's not forget this is still a business. You're trying to build a community bank in Midtown Manhattan? That's not realistic. And replacing a major financial institution with whatever this is? Investors are nervous." Maya leaned in, her voice steady but sharp. "Then they should be, because what's coming isn't business as usual. It's not about comfort, it's about justice. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, you're welcome to sell your shares." Silence. No one moved. Because the truth was, Maya had positioned herself too well. Her voting power was unmatched, her leverage unshakable. She didn't just win the game, she rewrote the rules. Later that evening, as Maya rode home in her black SUV, Devin handed her a folder. "What's this?" she asked. "Background check on Harper, the bank manager." She raised an eyebrow. "You think he's hiding something?" "I don't think, I know." Inside the file were pages of internal complaints filed by former employees and customers. Patterns of discriminatory lending, selective customer service, even flagged audio from a training session where Harper joked about spotting the broke ones by their shoes. Maya's jaw clenched. "How long has this been going on?" "Years," Devin said. "The bank settled quietly with at least 3 former employees, all women of color, all forced to sign NDAs. She looked out the window, watching the city blur past. "This isn't just about a bad customer experience," she whispered. "This is a disease." Devin nodded. "And you're the cure." Meanwhile, across the city, William Harper sat in his brownstone, scrolling furiously through his phone. The press had turned against him. His LinkedIn inbox was flooded with angry messages. He had already received a call from HR at corporate. His job was hanging by a thread. And then came the knock. He opened the door to find a man in a dark suit holding an envelope. "What's this?" Harper barked. "You've been served," the man replied, before walking away. Inside the envelope was a civil lawsuit. Maya Brooks, v. William Harper, and Manhattan Trust. Grounds: racial discrimination, violation of civil rights, retaliatory practices. His hands trembled as he read the pages, and for the first time in a long while he realized he wasn't untouchable anymore. Back at Equity First's temporary offices, Maya called an emergency team meeting. "We're not just launching a new financial space," she told her team. "We're launching a revolution. We're setting the tone for what it means to walk into a bank and feel seen. And I want every single detail from the music in the lobby to the language on our contracts to reflect that." Her lead designer raised a hand. "We've been looking into integrating local artist murals, maybe quotes from community leaders on the walls." "Yes," Maya said, "but make them bold, make them undeniable. I want people to walk in and feel the history we're correcting." Her tech lead chimed in. "We also finalized the app UI, features for undocumented customers to access safe services without fear, and financial literacy programs that can be accessed anonymously." Maya smiled for the first time in hours. "Good, because if the old system was built to shut people out, we're building one that throws the doors wide open." That night, as she walked alone through the construction zone of the soon-to-be Equity First flagship branch, Maya paused by the wall where her father's photo would hang. James Brooks, a postal worker, a community organizer, the man who taught her how to balance a checkbook before she was 10, who marched on Washington in '93 and carried a picture of Maya in his wallet during every protest. She whispered into the quiet, "I'm doing it, Daddy, just like you taught me." She ran her fingers along the plaster. "And I'm not stopping until no one has to walk into a bank and wonder if they'll be treated like a criminal or a customer." Behind her, Devon's voice broke the silence. "We've got another issue," she turned. "There's talk of a counter-campaign, whispers from downtown execs. They're not happy. They're talking lawsuits, negative pour pulling out of future investments." Maya didn't flinch. Let them talk. Let them sue. Let them burn their own foundations to the ground. She walked toward him, shoulders squared. "They've been building walls for centuries. I'm just here to make sure we don't climb over them anymore." She looked back at the rising space behind her, still dusty, still unfinished, but filled with a vision so clear it felt inevitable. This wasn't just a bank. It was a battle cry. And Maya Brooks wasn't just the face of the movement. She was the fire beneath it. "Excuse me, ma'am, do you need help locating the customer service line?" Naomi turned from the window where she'd been quietly observing the branch operations. The question had come from a sharply dressed white man in his 40s, slick hair, designer suit, smug smile. His tone was smooth, but there was an undercurrent of superiority that Naomi had heard her whole life. "I'm good," she replied, her voice calm and even. "Just observing." "I see," he said, giving her a once-over that barely hid his judgment. "This area is reserved for authorized personnel. Unless you're with one of our vendors, I'm going to have to ask you to step outside." "I'm not with a vendor," Naomi said, "but I'm not leaving." The man's smile thinned. "And you are?" Before Naomi could answer, a woman's voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Callahan," said a middle-aged black woman stepping into the corridor with a nervous look. "That's the woman I was telling you about. She was asking for branch blueprints and staff schedules. I didn't feel comfortable answering." Callahan's eyebrows shot up. "Ma'am, unless you have an appointment with corporate, I suggest you leave immediately before we involve security." Naomi looked him square in the eyes. "Do that. Call security, please," She folded her arms, completely unfazed. A silence stretched, awkward and heavy. "What exactly are you trying to accomplish here?" Callahan asked, now visibly irritated. Naomi pulled a crisp envelope from her leather bag and handed it to him. "This is a formal letter of intent. I've made an offer on this property, along with the adjacent lots. Ownership will transfer within 72 hours. Callahan blinked. "What?" "I'm buying the building," Naomi said flatly, "and as of next week, you'll be reporting to me." For a full 5 seconds, no one said anything. Then Callahan burst out laughing. "You? You're buying the building? Okay, ma'am, you've had your fun. But if you don't leave now, I'll make that call." Naomi didn't flinch. Make the call. He did. 2 uniformed officers arrived 15 minutes later, one of them immediately recognizing Naomi. "Ms. Carter?" Officer Landon asked with uncertainty. "Is everything all right?" "She was trespassing," Callahan said quickly. "We need her escorted out." Landon glanced at his partner, then at Naomi. "Sir, this woman owns Carter Holdings. She just acquired the building across the street last month." Callahan's face drained of color. "What?" Naomi turned to Landon, her voice still composed. "I'd like you to escort Mr. Callahan off the property. He just threatened to have the new owner removed from her own building." There was a beat of silence before Landon gave a low whistle. "Understood." As Callahan sputtered and protested, the second officer stepped forward and firmly asked him to gather his things. Staff members began peeking around corners, whispers spreading like wildfire. Naomi stood quietly as Callahan was led out in disbelief, but that wasn't the twist. As she turned to leave, Naomi saw a young Latina woman, no more than 25, standing near the entrance, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I saw what happened to you yesterday. They do that to people like us all the time, but no one ever fights back." Naomi softened. "What's your name?" "Isabel," she said. "I'm an intern. They barely acknowledge me." "Not anymore," Naomi said. "Starting next week, you'll be my assistant, full-time, salaried." Isabel gasped, hands covering her mouth. "Are you serious?" Naomi smiled. "Dead serious." As she walked out of the bank that had once rejected her, Naomi felt the stares and silence trail behind her. But this time it wasn't pity. It was respect, fear, and something else. Change. Outside, her driver opened the door of a black SUV. As Naomi got in, she pulled out her phone. "Angela, I need you to bump up the meeting with City Council," she said. "This branch isn't the only one. It's time we talk about systemic access to capital in marginalized neighborhoods." Angela's voice on the other end was sharp and ready. "Already in motion." Naomi looked back at the building through the tinted glass. She didn't just buy a bank. She was about to flip the entire financial system on its head. It had only been 4 days since Naomi's stunning confrontation at the bank, but the ripple effects were already being felt across the city's financial sector. Inside the former branch office, now temporarily shut down for renovations, contractors were removing outdated signage and replacing it with sleek panels bearing the name Carter Financial Access Initiative. The move was bold, swift, and calculated. Naomi didn't just want to own the building, she wanted to transform it. But while her public victory sparked headlines and applause from progressive circles, the backlash was already building. At City Hall, behind closed doors, Councilman Robert Ellison, a longtime advocate for business as usual, was fuming. "She's trying to dismantle the system from the inside." "Ja, ma'am," he snapped, slamming a stack of documents on the table in a private meeting. "You don't just buy a building and change the rules of banking." Across the table, a balding, tight-lipped man in a navy blue suit raised an eyebrow. "She's within her rights." She's disrupting everything, Ellison said. Minority lending requirements, corporate partnerships, even our ties with South Bank and Empire Union. She's a wildfire. The man in blue gave a slow, deliberate nod. Then we put it out. Meanwhile, Naomi sat across from a group of local business owners in a community center not far from where she grew up. I'm not here to hand out favors, she said firmly, scanning the room. I'm here to build a network. If you've got ideas, businesses, solutions, we're going to find ways to fund them. But you'll be held accountable just like anyone else. Excellence is the standard, not pity. The room erupted in quiet nods and murmurs of agreement. From the back, an older woman raised her hand. Miss Carter, do you really think one building, one bank is enough to fight what we've been dealing with for generations? Naomi took a breath. No. That's why this isn't about one building. This is a blueprint. I plan to replicate this model across underserved neighborhoods in the state, but I need partners who are ready. People who believe it can be done. After the meeting, as Naomi walked toward her car, her assistant Angela rushed up beside her. We've got a situation, she said, pulling her tablet from her bag. A memo just leaked from South Bank's legal team. They're claiming the sale of the building was rushed, possibly unethical. They're threatening to sue. Naomi stopped mid-step. Sue me for buying a building they listed publicly? That's not all, Angela added. There's chatter they're planning to discredit you personally. Background checks, old business partners, media manipulation. They want to make you look like a fraud. Naomi clenched her jaw, trying to stay calm. I built everything I have from the ground up, she said. They think they can scare me with lawsuits and character assassination? Angela hesitated. We might need to get ahead of it. Naomi turned to her. Then let's get ahead of it. That night, Naomi made a rare appearance on a local political talk show, known for its brutal honesty and unscripted moments. The host, a seasoned black journalist named Marcus Tate, didn't mince words. Naomi Carter, you just walked into a bank that denied you service and ended up buying the entire building. People are calling you a hero. Others are calling you reckless. What do you say to them? Naomi leaned forward, her voice steady. I say I'm tired of waiting for change. If that makes me reckless, then I'll wear that title proudly. But I didn't do this to be a hero. I did this because I know what it feels like to be overlooked, talked down to, dismissed. And I'm not hollow. Tate nodded slowly. But are you ready for the backlash? They're coming for you. I've been preparing for them my entire life. The segment went viral. Within 48 hours, Naomi's foundation saw a surge in donations. Volunteers showed up in record numbers. Influential business figures began calling her office, not to challenge her, but to join her. But for every door opening, there was another one slamming shut. Naomi's phone rang just past midnight. Naomi? It's Reggie. Her old college friend and current corporate attorney sounded shaken. They're going after your father. Naomi went still. What are you talking about? Somebody's feeding a story to the press. They're digging up your dad's criminal record from the 80s, saying he was tied to a money laundering scheme when he worked security for a nightclub. They're trying to use that to question the legitimacy of your early funding. Naomi's hand tightened around the phone. He was exonerated, she said, voice low and cold. They sealed those records. Doesn't matter, they're spinning it. Naomi didn't speak for a moment. When she finally did, her voice was steel. Then it's time I tell the story myself. The next morning, Naomi held a press conference outside the newly acquired branch. She stood alone, no podium, no script, just a mic and the truth. My father made mistakes, but he was also a man who walked away from the streets, worked double shifts to raise his family, and taught me everything I know about resilience. If you want to attack someone, attack me. but don't drag a good man's name through the mud because you're afraid of a woman owning a bank." The crowd was silent at first. Then, slowly, applause began. Then cheers. Reporters scrambled to capture every word, every tear she didn't let fall. Naomi walked off the steps, back straight, eyes ahead. This fight was no longer about a building or a bank. It was about a system. And she had just made it clear she wasn't backing down. Rain pelted the city like a warning shot from the sky. Inside her downtown apartment, Naomi Carter stood barefoot at the window, watching streaks of lightning dance across the skyline. The city felt different now, less like a place she lived in, more like a battlefield she was constantly trying to survive. Each move forward came with a counterattack, each win met with an attempt to strip her bare. And now they were using her family as a weapon. Angela paced behind her, phone in hand. "I just got confirmation from our legal team," she said. "South Bank is officially moving forward with their lawsuit. They're alleging breach of contract, unfair business practices, and undue influence. Total nonsense." Naomi didn't turn from the window. "And the press?" Angela hesitated. "Divided. Some are calling it a political witch hunt. Others are buying into the narrative that you're this aggressive billionaire using personal vendettas to dismantle the system." Naomi's voice was quiet, which is ironic, considering that same system built itself by dismantling us. Angela put the phone down on the counter. "They're scared of you. You know that, right?" Naomi finally turned. Her face was composed, but her eyes were fire. "Let them be." The next day, Naomi entered the courtroom flanked by her legal team. Flashes from photographers lit up the hallway like a disco floor. Protesters lined the street, some in support, others holding signs that read, "Too much power" and "Banks aren't activism." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Opposing counsel Harold Givens was a smug, polished man in his late 50s, a legal shark who made his name defending Wall Street giants and crushing class-action suits. To him, Naomi was a PR problem, a woman who'd stepped out of line. "Your Honor," Givens began, "this isn't just about a property dispute. It's about protecting the integrity of our financial institutions. Ms. Carter used undue pressure and public spectacle to influence a legal transaction. We're asking for an injunction on all her operations at the property." Naomi's lead attorney, Maya Estrada, stood with calm precision. "Your Honor, Ms. Carter followed every legal procedure. The sale was public, transparent. This is not a lawsuit, it's retaliation. It's about silencing a woman who dared to challenge tradition." The judge, an older black woman with piercing eyes, raised a brow at Givens. "Are you truly suggesting that a legal transaction becomes undue just because the buyer drew public attention?" Givens faltered slightly. "We're suggesting the entire environment was manipulated." The judge gave a thin smile. "Sounds like your problem, not hers." But while the courtroom leaned in Naomi's favor, something else was happening outside. Reggie called that night. His voice trembled. "They're digging deeper," he said. "Not just your father now. They're going after Carter Financial's tax filings, your philanthropic arms, even the lease agreement on the new community center. They're trying to bury you in paperwork." Naomi closed her eyes, exhaustion wrapping around her shoulders like chains. "What's their end game?" she asked. "To make the public question your integrity. If they can't win in court, they'll bleed you out with scandal and doubt." Naomi hung up and sat in silence. For the first time, she felt the edges of her strength begin to fray, not because she was afraid of the fight, but because she was starting to wonder if it would ever end. Hours later, she was walking through the Carter Initiative's newest community branch in Southside when she noticed something strange. Two men in maintenance uniforms she didn't recognize were fiddling with the security system near the server room. "Hey!" she called out. "Who authorized this?" The men froze. One of them mumbled, We're from Central Operations. No, you're not, Naomi said, stepping closer. We contract locally. Show me your badges. The man bolted. Naomi sprinted after him. He darted through the lobby, knocking over a stand of brochures, and pushed through the emergency exit door. Naomi caught up just in time to catch the tail of his jacket, yanking him back. But it was too late. The other man was gone. And when security checked the server room, the backup drives were missing. It wasn't a robbery. It was sabotage. They're trying to erase us, Naomi whispered. Angela arrived minutes later, breathless. We need to shut down all remote systems. Pull everything offline until we figure out how much data they accessed. Naomi didn't respond. She stood frozen in the lobby, hand clenched around her phone. They're not just fighting back, she finally said. They're going nuclear. Angela stared at her. What do we do? Naomi looked around at the walls they had built, the programs, the people they had helped, the lives already changed. We hit back harder. By morning, Naomi launched a full-scale campaign across social media, not to defend herself, but to expose the shadow war being waged behind closed doors. She released documents showing the smear tactics, anonymous emails, forged complaints. She named names, called out institutions, showed the footage of the attempted breach at her branch. It was bold, risky, and it worked. Suddenly, the story wasn't Naomi Carter versus South Bank. It was Naomi Carter versus corruption. Civil rights groups rallied behind her. Black-owned businesses pledged support. Even a few high-profile celebrities reshared her video, calling it the speech of a generation. But with every move forward, Naomi knew the final confrontation was coming. She didn't just need to defend her name. She needed to burn down the lie that power only belonged to the privileged, and she was ready to light the match. Naomi had never felt fear like this, not when she stood in boardrooms full of men determined to belittle her. Not when she walked into the courtroom knowing half the jury had already judged her. Not even when the racist landlord tried to throw her out on the sidewalk like she didn't own the whole damn building. But tonight was different, because this time the attack was aimed at everything she'd built and everyone who depended on her. The break-in wasn't just about missing data. It was a threat, a message, a declaration of war. At 2:14 a.m., Naomi sat in her home office, the glow of her monitors casting long shadows across the room. Her laptop screen showed line after line of code and logs from the breach. Angela was on the couch, half asleep, holding a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. They accessed our community grant files, Naomi said quietly. They know every single person we've funded. Every local org, every leader we've partnered with. Angela sat up straighter. They're building a target list. Naomi nodded. They want to scare people away from standing with us. Then we go public with it. Name every damn one of them. No, Naomi said. We protect them. We take the hits. That's leadership. Angela looked at her. Then what do we do? Naomi leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen like a sniper lining up a shot. We find out who helped them. And that's when the first twist dropped. 2 hours later, a whistleblower email hit Naomi's encrypted inbox. Subject: They're not working alone. Attached was a confidential memo leaked from inside South Bank Holdings. It showed a list of indirect partners, smaller firms and shell companies laundering influence and funneling money toward political pressure campaigns. But what shook Naomi to her core wasn't just the list of names. It was the last one, Devereaux and Crowley, her father's old law firm, the same firm that once paid for her private school tuition, the same firm that used to sponsor charity galas in her mother's name. For years, she thought they were just relics of a past she'd outgrown. Now they were feeding the very machine that was trying to destroy her. She stood up slowly. My father worked for them his entire life. Angela's eyes narrowed. You think he knew? Naomi hesitated. I think he didn't want to. By sunrise, Naomi had a new plan, not a press release, not a legal motion, an ambush. She scheduled an emergency town hall at the Southside Community Center for that evening. No press, no cameras, just residents, staff, local activists, and a few key allies. She stood before them not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, but as a daughter of the neighborhood. They're not just trying to stop me, she said. They're trying to erase every one of you, your businesses, your futures, your dignity. A woman in the crowd stood. Her name was Darlene, a retired teacher who ran a reading program out of Naomi's center. I've seen this before, she said. They send in the lawyers, the inspectors, the lawsuits, until we give up and move out. But we're not moving, Naomi said, and we're not giving up. Another voice chimed in from the back. They'll come harder now. What if they go after our kids, our homes? Naomi stepped forward. Then we make sure they know if they come for one of us, they come for all of us. Applause broke out, not polite claps, thunder. Later that night, Naomi received a call from a blocked number. She answered. A man's voice, smooth and calm, spoke. You're making a lot of noise, Miss Carter. Then maybe you should start listening, she said. He chuckled. You've got courage. But courage doesn't stop lawsuits. It doesn't stop audits or subpoenas or accidents. Naomi's voice dropped to ice. If anything happens to anyone tied to my organization, I will drag every name connected to you into the light. I will tear down every building your clients have ever financed. I will sue your grandchildren. Silence. Then the line went dead. Naomi looked at Angela. He's scared. Angela raised an eyebrow. He just threatened to kill us. Exactly. The next morning, an anonymous tip led Naomi to something unexpected, a hidden property acquisition Southbank had tried to bury in a network of offshore shell companies. She traced it back to a plot of land just 5 miles outside the city, a proposed site for a green redevelopment zone. But when Naomi and Angela drove out to see it, the only thing green about it were the bribes keeping it off the public records. It was a toxic waste site, unregulated, leaking into a low-income black neighborhood. Southbank had planned to quietly acquire, clean, and redevelop it, and sell luxury condos at a 500% markup, using state grant money meant for community health initiatives. Angela took photos. Naomi recorded everything. We just found their Achilles heel, she whispered. But as they turned to leave, a black SUV pulled up behind them, blocking the dirt road. 2 men stepped out, wearing suits and dark sunglasses. Angela muttered, This feels like a movie. The taller one said, You're trespassing. Naomi stared at them. So are you. On justice. She reached into her bag, pulled out a copy of the deed, and waved it. This land belongs to the people, and they're about to know everything. For a moment, neither man moved. Then they stepped aside. Back at the community center, Naomi dropped the bomb. She held a press conference this time with every local news outlet invited, cameras rolling, mics hot. She laid out the whole scheme, the land, the toxins, the fake companies, the connections to Southbank, the leaked documents. And then she named the final twist. Devereaux and Crowley, my father's old firm, has been laundering their paperwork in the same offices where he once fought for affordable housing. The room went silent. Naomi's voice trembled just once. He died believing he served something noble. I won't let them stain his name. I won't let them use his legacy to harm mine. By the time she stepped off the podium, her phone was blowing up. Senators, investigators, whistleblowers, Southbank was collapsing from within. But Naomi knew the final battle wasn't over yet. It was waiting inside the courtroom, and this time she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her father, for every life they tried to bulldoze, and for a future no one could steal again. Naomi Carter sat in the courtroom, her jaw clenched, her heart steady. This wasn't her first legal fight, but it was by far the most personal. Across from her sat the three lawyers representing South Bank Holdings and their shell corporations. They wore polished smiles and $1,000 suits, but Naomi saw through them. Men hired to spin lies into legality. But today their spin was over. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge entered. Naomi glanced around. The gallery was packed activists, journalists, former tenants, non-profit leaders, even a few wary political figures. All of them had followed Naomi's journey, and now they were here to witness how it would end. Angela leaned over and whispered, "You ready to bury these clowns?" Naomi didn't smile. "I'm ready to speak for every voice they tried to silence." The trial had moved quickly, thanks to the mountain of evidence Naomi and her team had exposed. The toxic land cover-up, the bribes, the fake environmental certificates, the email chains confirming South Bank's intent to target and displace low-income black communities in the name of revitalization. But the final day brought a twist no one expected. The opposing counsel requested a recess. 5 minutes turned into 20. When the doors opened again, an older white man walked in, leaning on a cane. His face was familiar. Naomi blinked, stunned. It was Leonard Crowley, retired senior partner of Devereaux and Crowley, her father's old mentor. He slowly made his way to the front of the courtroom and took a seat at the witness stand. Naomi turned to her attorney. "What is he doing here?" "He contacted the court this morning, said he had something to confess." The courtroom fell into silence as the judge allowed the deposition to proceed. Crowley cleared his throat, voice gravelly from age and guilt. "For the record, I'm here to testify voluntarily and against the firm I helped build." He looked directly at Naomi. "Your father, Naomi, was the most principled man I ever met. He didn't know the truth about our financial clients. He never would have stayed if he had." Naomi stared, frozen. Crowley continued. "When he died, I inherited all his fields. I kept them sealed, out of shame. But when I saw what these people were doing, dragging his name through the mud, using our firm to funnel dirty money, I knew I couldn't stay silent." He pulled out a stack of folders. "Inside these are contracts, ledgers, bank memos, all signed under fake corporate names. I was there, I approved them, and I knew it was wrong." The courtroom erupted. Naomi felt her knees go weak, but she stayed upright. Crowley's confession wasn't just a bombshell, it was a reckoning, a redemption, for her father, for the people of the South Side, for every story buried by corporate silence. By noon, the judge declared a full investigation into Devereaux and Crowley, frozen the assets of South Bank Holdings, and unsealed the case for federal review. Civil and criminal charges would follow. Outside the courthouse, Naomi was swarmed by reporters. "Naomi, what do you say to people who think you just got lucky with the evidence? Would you consider running for public office after this? Was it personal or justice?" Naomi raised a hand, silencing them. "This was never about luck. This was about truth. It was about fighting for the people no one listens to, and I didn't do it alone. We built this together." The crowd cheered. Angela stepped beside her. "You just took down $1 billion empire." Naomi looked across the street at the South Side Housing Center. Kids were playing on the sidewalk. Murals covered the walls. Life had returned. "No," she said quietly, "we just reclaimed our future." A few weeks later, Naomi held a ceremony in honor of her father. The foundation was being renamed the Carter Justice Initiative. Its new mission would expand nationwide, focusing on legal defense, environmental justice, and black entrepreneurship. Leonard Crowley was there. So was Darlene. So were hundreds of people whose lives Naomi had touched. Through one fight, one lawsuit, one unapologetic stand at a time. But it wasn't just a celebration. It was a vow. Today, Naomi said into the microphone, her voice steady with purpose, we make it known that power doesn't just sit in boardrooms. It rises in communities. It speaks in courtrooms. It walks into rooms no one expects and says, I belong here. And that's exactly what we'll keep doing. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Naomi stood at the edge of the crowd, watching the next generation run free under the mural of her father's face, painted on the community center wall, with a quote beneath it, dignity is not given, it's defended. This wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of something far bigger. Because once truth breaks through, it doesn't go back in the shadows. And neither would she. If this story moved you, if Naomi's fight felt like your fight too, don't let it end here. Like, comment, share this with someone who still believes justice matters, and hit that subscribe button so we can keep telling stories that need to be told. Because when we stand together, no system, no boardroom, no billion-dollar lie can silence the truth.